Hey grandkids, all three of you so far. We'll see how many we wind up having eventually. Grandpa coming to you from an old fort from the Civil War. It was the Yellow Bluff. It's a state park. It's a really tiny state park. But one thing that's cool about it is that even though it's not quiet, we're right near a major highway and a giant bridge that I was scared crapless to go across when we first came to this area, way before we even moved here. I had to drive the 31-foot RV across the bridge. It's called the Dames Point Bridge, and I was just scared because I'm afraid of heights. If you've been watching my videos, you know about that. So we're at this place. It actually was a fort that was set up by Robert E. Lee for the Confederates to, we're on the north side of the St. Johns River. So this is probably the very southernmost part of where the Confederacy was at the time. But eventually it wound up being in Union hands. So both troops were here, and it's in the original condition that it was. There's a few cannons around here, and you can see one over my left shoulder there. But it's really nothing than a clearing on a bluff, and I guess that bluff is Yellow Bluff. Today I want to talk to you about how to live your life. Now, the day that I finished working on this, we'll call it a script for lack of a better term, was the day that the Eagles lost in the Super Bowl. It was the 2022 football season. So it happened in February of 2023. I went to the American Legion and I watched, and they lost. They actually, I think, played a very good game. They could have won it, and a lot of people think they should have won it, but that's neither here nor there. The reason that I'm bringing this up is that the hero for the Eagles in that game, even though they lost, was a young quarterback named Jalen Hurts. Now, the thing about Jalen Hurts is people always said, well, he's not talented, he just works really hard. I'm going to tell you something. Working hard is a talent. Work hard. If you're one of these people that goes, I'm not athletically inclined, so I don't have any raw talent, work hard. Work hard. If you're not 6'4", 220 pounds, you're probably, if you're like 5'7", and 140 pounds, you're probably not going to get into the NFL anyway. Doesn't matter how hard you work. But working hard is probably the biggest talent, because if you have that talent, you can use it in any part of your life. And that's what I'm going to talk about. To further make my point, when I was younger, there were teams in Philadelphia that were very good, that had a lot of talent. The late 1970s Philadelphia Phillies, they had Larry Boa, and they had Mike Schmidt, Greg Luzinski, tons of talent. Luzinski and Schmidt were in the top 5 home runs, in at least in the National League, every year. But it wasn't until they got a guy named Pete Rose, who was one of these guys that it's like, oh, he doesn't have a lot of talent, but they called him Charlie Hustle. That was his nickname. And everybody hated him when he was winning World Series for the Cincinnati Reds. But then when he got to Philly, we got into 2 World Series in 80 and 83, I think, and won the first and lost the second. But he was the one that pushed him over the top. Hard work trumps talent all the time. It's the tortoise and the hare, and I'm sure that I'm going to be reading that in my other channel. story time with Grandpa. I think I have that on the horizon. But it's very important. The Sixers in the 80s, they had Dr. J, and he was very talented. And these guys all work hard. But the real hard workers are the guys like Moses Malone and Bobby Jones. And it wasn't until they got Moses Malone that they wound up winning the NBA championship. And he was just a bread and butter, beat you up in the trenches kind of guy. A guy named Bobby Clark with the Flyers. He was there pretty early on, and he was the one that led the team to 2 Stanley Cups. So, and got him into the playoffs every year, and I think he was still there when they got in with Pelle Lindbergh and lost to Edmonton, but I'm not sure about that. So let's talk about athletics in the United States for a little while. People go like, oh yeah, look at that guy, he's in the NFL and he sucks. Trust me, nobody in the NFL sucks. They're all highly talented. Let me prove that to you. Every year in the United States, there are 1.1 million high school football players. Wow, coffee milkshake. It's paid for. I have the proof right there. The average length of a pro football career is 3.3 years. So you have 1.1 million high school people being funneled into the college system and then into the NFL. And now there's other, there's the XFL and the USFL, and there's the Canadian Football League. There's all kinds of stuff. But let's just stick with the NFL. In the NFL, there's 1,700 starters. At any point in time, on any given Sunday, if you include the teams that are having the bye week, there's 1,700 starters. So that's a 0.05% chance of a kid in high school making it to the NFL. 0.05% is 0.0005151. That's the decimal. 0.0005151. Out of every 1.1 million students, 500 or 600 a year make it to the NFL. And they work their butts off to get there. Even the scrubs. Trust me, you're going to hear fat guys sitting at bars going like, that guy stinks. I couldn't have made that kick. No, you could not have made that kick. You're just a fat guy sitting at a bar. You have a lot of mouth. I'm sure you don't have much leg. Now, you're probably not going to make it to the NFL or any other kind of elite sports category. If you have a predisposition talent-wise, like there's certain body types that make it to the NFL. There's certain body types that become professional, Olympic swimmers, Olympic sprinters, things like that. If you have that and you work, you'll get as far as your work takes you. But what you can do is you can strive to lead a good, well-rounded life. And your odds, if you work at it, of leading a good, well-rounded life are way, way better than your odds of making it in professional sports. But the journeys are similar. So you should live your life the way that an athlete lives their life. And you should live your life in several different ways that way. Your physical life, your school and work life, your intellectual life, and your family and spiritual life. Now, how do athletes get to where they're going? They get there by having a goal, a plan, and then they put that plan into action. A goal, a plan, and action. And part of that, the action part, is developing a routine and following that routine, having a commitment to the routine, repeating it over and over and over again. A guy who's a pitcher in Major League Baseball has thrown the same pitch over and over and over again. So he wants to have a split-fingered fastball. He's going to throw a split-fingered fastball thousands of times until he's gotten it so that people can't hit it. And that's what you need to do in your life. You need to have, your goal, your plan, and then a routine to put it into action, and you need to stick with that routine. So let's start with talking about your physical life. In your physical life, yeah, you're an athlete. I still run sometimes, although not much. I've recently been injured. I'm doing more hiking, and I'll be hiking later today. Doing more hiking than I'm doing running, but that's okay. I'm living the life of an athlete. I have a goal, I have a plan, and I'm taking the action. I have a routine that I do to make me better every day. So you have to ask yourself, in your physical life, what is your goal? Mine is to maintain a fairly healthy body so that I have a good quality of life. I want to be around, Olive, you're not even born yet. I want to be around when you're 20 years old. I want to be around and go to your wedding. They might have to wheel me in there, but I want to be there. I walked your mom up the aisle when she married your dad, and I won't get to walk you up. Your dad's going to do that, but I can give him some advice on how to do it right. So what I always use, and this is a good plan, it's the 5-5-5 rule. I didn't invent this. I stole it someplace. I don't know where I stole it from, but you look at what's going on 5 days from now, 5 months from now, and 5 years from now. Where do I want to be in the next 5 days? What do I have to do to get there? And that's based on where you want to be in the next 5 months. Say that you want to run a marathon and you've already run a half marathon. You're going to have a much shorter time frame to be able to get there. So you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to look at these things and say, okay, I've never gone running in my life. What do I need to do? The first time I went running, I bought some sneakers and went out on the beach and ran half a mile. And then the next day I ran a mile. Well, that was a pretty good plan. So you have a plan. Whatever your plan is, you have to figure out what it is in your physical life. Then you say, well, how do I get there? So it's going to be the same in each one of these things. How do I get there? Well, first off, what is available to you? To me, for running or hiking, because I quite often just leave the house and go out on the beach and walk for a few miles, or I go out and run for a couple miles. So for me, it's that I realized very early on that people who were going to Fairmount Park to ride their bicycles had to add like 2 hours onto their workout just to get there. They had to put their bike on the bike rack, drive to the park, take the bike down, go for the ride, and go through the whole thing in reverse to get home. I could put on my sneakers and some shorts and shirt, go out the front door and run. Didn't matter when I lived in Kensington, in Philadelphia. It didn't matter. Like I remember when I went to my friend Larry's wedding out in some Waukegan, Michigan, or someplace on the lake, one of the big lakes across from Chicago. Guess Lake Michigan. I I had stuff in my bag. We drove out there, so I had a suitcase, and in my suitcase I had the 3 things I needed to go running, and I just went out from the hotel, went for a run. I ran into some other people that were driving to the wedding, and they went, "What are you doing out here?" Well, staying in shape, trying to stay alive for my grandchildren. There's also running groups. I belong to one now called the Jacks Beach Runners. I've met some really cool people. There's young people, there's old people, and everybody in between. There's fast runners, slow runners. But we all have one thing in common. We love to run. So you can get into meetup groups and things like that. There's cross training also. If you just go out and run every day, you're gonna mess yourself up. You're gonna get injured fairly quickly. So you have to cross train. Ride your bike one day instead of running. You take a day off. Ride your bike. Stretch after each time you run. This all has to become part of that routine. So you have your goal. You decide where you want to be 5 days from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now. And then you have a plan. And that's your plan. I'm going to go running every other day. I'm going to run for this much time now, then I'm going to increase it, or I'm going to go faster, or I'm going to do intervals, something like that. And then what you do, and this is really important with all these things, is figure out your first step and take it. I did a whole series called One Small Step. It's an efficiency course on Udemy for managers. I highly recommend that you take that course. It's free. Even if you're not my grandchild, it's free. I provided it on there for free because why wouldn't I want to help people become more efficient? And if you do that, you'll find out that part of becoming efficient is to break your big tasks. Like, I want to run a marathon, and I've never run in my life. I want to run a marathon. What do I do? Is to break that task down, that giant, enormous, hairy task, into small, manageable bites. But then the most important thing is take the first bite. Take your first step. So that's what you want to do. Have your plan, and then have your goal, have that develop into a plan, and then take that first step. And you'll find that it's easier to make that into a routine. So you want to schedule your workout. I run a certain time of day based on the tides. I like to run on the beach, so I want to run at low tide. So it's not necessarily every morning at 7 I go running, but every day that I run, it's not as important when I hike on the beach because it's easier to walk on soft sand than it is to run on it. So it's based on when the tide's low. The day of the Super Bowl, the last thing I wanted to do was run. I don't remember why, but I went, oh, I'm dreading going out and running. But it's a habit. If you do it enough, it turns into a habit. And then you just keep doing it. Another thing you need to do is evaluate where you are from time to time. Look back on what you've done. Don't be crazy about keeping statistics unless you're just into that. But look back and say, well, this is where I started off to go. Am I getting there? If I'm not, well, what could I do differently? Another thing is, to be a physical athlete, is eat good food. Rest. And like I said before, stretch. No matter what sport you play, no matter what physical activity you do, you want to rest and stretch and eat good food. Now, if you just run and don't stretch, you don't cross train, and you don't hydrate well, and that's another thing. You need to hydrate when you're in physical activity. You need to be drinking some water. You're going to have a modicum of fitness, but you're not going to reach the goal that you set. Trust me, you're going to set a goal that's based on you doing everything right. So you don't want to just do one thing right. Now, that whole thing where you have a plan based on a goal, you put that into action, and you make that part of your life, you can take that and spread it into the other parts of your life. And I see now that we're almost 21 minutes into this and I'm not halfway done. So how about if we learn how to take this athlete's life, this athletic life, and take it into the other parts of our lives next time. Until then, peace out.